Welcome to Engineer Muscle Podcast number 22, guys. Today we have one of the old school OGs, my very first coach, Derek Charlebois. Derek has been in the trenches for about 15 to 20 years now. He runs a supplementation company called PR Breaker. Dude is just, he started off as a bodybuilder, now a power lifter, has coached hundreds of people. He calls himself the first ever online coach. In the very beginning. I'm really excited to have you, Derek. How are you doing today?
Awesome, Mo. That was a great introduction, man. You covered everything.
From the start to finish.
Yeah.
Yeah, man, let's go ahead and let's get started with how you got started. Because I look at some of your progress pictures from the very early days, and you were kind of like, you made gains quick.
Yeah. So when I first got into bodybuilding, I was probably 15 years old. And I think at that time I weighed about 135 to 140 pounds. So I wasn't small. I wasn't big for my size. I was just like an average kid at the time. And I dove headfirst into bodybuilding and had probably a solid 4 years where I was obsessed with it, where it's just 100% everything's bodybuilding, everything's about the meals, everything's about the training. So I gained a good chunk of the size I even have now, probably from age 15 to 20, because I was doing full bulks, eating 5,000 calories a day for months on end, and just bulking, cutting for 5 years straight. And I would say I gained the majority of my size during that time period.
So I imagine that you probably found that now going into strength sports and being a power lifter, that a lot of that bodybuilding size that you did in your earlier years really laid a foundation for you to build your strength upon.
Yeah, absolutely. So when I train younger powerlifters, I'll often have them do a decent amount of hypertrophy work just to build that base, because they often start, I don't want to say scrawny, but on the smaller size. So it's they don't have the frame to handle as much weight on certain exercises. So having that muscular base is definitely gonna, give you better progress long-term in powerlifting. And that's not to say, someone that's smaller can't be strong, because we see a lot of cases of people who are smaller that are very strong, but, having more muscle is never a bad thing.
Yeah. And I find it helps, kind of injury-proof people, and it just gives them that foundation to do more work and more volume, and they'll just progress so much faster, the strength, and for a much longer period as well, as you alluded to. It just really raises that cap on what they can. So I'm also a big proponent of that, and but I think the vice versa, the opposite is true too. A lot of times people who are strictly in physique sports don't ever kind of look at building up their strength side of things.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's really, really useful to kind of push those numbers up just to get stronger, so that when they go back to their volume, they just have doing their volume with more weight as well.
Yeah. So
that.
As you bring up that point, when I was 100% focused on bodybuilding, a lot of my training was more strength-based as far as numbers go. And it wasn't one repetition max strength. It was 3 to 6 rep range strength. Mm-hmm. So I always focused on getting as strong as possible in the big lifts in that rep range. So yeah, it's it goes both ways. Powerlifters can focus on size, and strict physique athletes should focus on strength. So there's always carryover between the two sports. So I think that's something that both sides often overlook, because as all things in fitness, it's either black or white, one extreme to the other. But the answer to most things is somewhere in the middle.
Right. And you said you were eating 5,000 calories in the beginning just to bulk up.
Just eating, man, just eating.
and what's funny? A lot of the time when beginners get into bodybuilding or when they hire coaches, I have a lot of people come to me and they just want to get lean. They were fat at that point, and they're hiring a trainer to get 6-pack abs.
Yeah.
So at the time, I think people neglect that beginner newbie gains by cutting too fast. And for you, when you were eating 5,000 calories, did you gain fat at all? Were you ever worried about that part?
So there was one bulk where, usually when I was bulking in those days, it would start off very clean and structured. And, as calories got higher and higher and higher, you get to a point where you're just adding food for the sake of adding calories. So like my breakfast is normally protein powder, oatmeal, peanut butter, something like that. And as you start bulking, you're like, well, I'm going to add a tablespoon of honey in now that get, like 15 extra grams of carbs. Then when you're up, 5,000 plus, you just take that honey bear and you're just squeezing that thing and you're not even measuring it. You're just like, I'm just adding carbs just to add carbs in it. So there was one bulk where I didn't realize how much fat I had gained until I saw a picture of myself at someone's wedding. And as soon as I saw that picture, I started cutting the next day.
I've been there as well. That I did way back in the day. It was one of my first times tracking macros too, but just to like get my calories up, like almost every day, I'd end up having like a pint of Ben & Jerry's just added on to the end of the day.
Yeah.
And sometimes when I work with clients that just don't like eating and have trouble just getting enough food to gain size, that's one of the things I'll recommend them, just like, it's usually a last resort if I can't get them to eat like real stuff, but I'll just like have a pint of Ben & Jerry's every night or something.
Yeah. See, if I have a client who can't gain weight or like they don't like eating, like you said, I'll normally have them do the whey and dextrose shakes post workout just to get something in. And I'm not a fan or proponent of high glycemic carbs. But in those situations where, like you said, it's like they don't like eating or they feel like they can't eat more food, you have to find ways to get extra calories in, even if they may not be the most ideal ways.
Right. Absolutely. Like I have a lot of trouble relating to those people because
I never understood when someone's like, I forgot to eat breakfast. I'm like, you forgot to eat breakfast? Be like, I ate breakfast and I was already ready to eat the next meal. Like, what are you talking about?
Right. No, I think there's a different level of discipline with people who compete and just lifestyle clients. Like,
yeah.
Biggest breakthroughs I had.
And going back to kind of what you're saying, how a lot of people come to you and say, I want a six-pack abs. For a younger person who wants to compete, their initial thought may be like, oh, I want to get lean. But like you're saying, you almost need to build that muscular base before you can even cut to get to the competition stage. Because you may think you have a certain amount of muscle and then you cut for the competition and you're like, oh, I'm kind of skinny at this weight. So then you're like, then they realize like, all right, I should take the time and gain muscle. And I was talking to someone yesterday because we were talking about my clients competing and how we talked about a little bit before we started this podcast. The off season is what's going to determine how you look on stage. So a lot of people put so much focus and effort into the contest prep or getting lean and then kind of, half-ass it during the off season and don't really put forth the same effort. But, that's where those gains are made and where the progress shows the next years during that off season.
And generally, like the off season is almost always longer than the on, right? It should.
It should be. Yeah, for sure.
Some people don't do it, but they really should. I can't overemphasize the off season and just an effective quality bulk for especially the smaller guys and newer guys. It's everything. Like I'm first competing now because I didn't see any point in like doing it super hard, cut and shredding all the way down because I wanted to be somewhat competitive when I first stepped on stage.
Yeah.
And so I just worked on building my base and building my muscularity for the last, 10 years now or whatever.
Yeah.
And so for like people who are just getting into it, I would recommend them getting at least a couple years under their belt before thinking about, shredding all the way down, unless they're already, someone who's kind of blessed. But
right.
Rarely do see the blessed ones. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I mean, if someone's been weight training for a few years and has a decent muscle base, and then they decide to compete, that's different than someone who's just starting and they're like, oh, I'm going to do a bodybuilding competition. And then, they don't have that experience and that muscle built up yet. But no, and I usually recommend for a lot of competitors is competing every other year. So like how we're saying, then they have that full year to gain muscle and have a true off season. But again, that's often hard too because a lot of people want to compete every year. So if they're cutting for, let's say, 16, 20 weeks, and then they have, so let's say 32 week off season, 20 week cut. I mean, if you're constantly just doing that in rotation, then that's not a lot of time to build muscle, really.
Absolutely.
That's spot on. How many years did you wait before your first show?
About 3 years. So yeah, I lifted from age 15 to age 18. And again, pretty much bulked the majority of that time with cutting interspersed, in between. So 3 solid years. And I think I competed. So what's interesting is I think the very first time I competed, I weighed 180. And then I competed again the next year and weighed 176, but I was bigger and leaner. So it's kind of, that 180 at 18 wasn't as quality as a lighter weight the next year where I had more muscle. So, a lot of times people get so focused on body weight. And if you're a younger guy getting into competing, you may compete at a lighter weight as you get older and look bigger and better because you have more muscle. So I would say, don't get hyper focused on body weight.
So that's the numbers that you said. So you started off as 135, and then for your first show, 3 years later, shredded at 175.
4 years later, when I was 19, about 175, I was pretty shredded.
That's remarkable. So 4 years, 40 pounds of, good size there.
Yeah. And I would say, so in 2019, when I was in the 170s, I was pretty shredded. And then when I was 21, so 2 years later, I competed at 180. So to give you that kind of perspective, those first four years or so, I gained more muscle than the next 2 years. So let's say I gained 30 pounds of lean mass in those first 4 years, and then 5 pounds of lean mass in the next 2 years. So that, again, it goes to show you those newbie teenage gains compared to when you get a little older and a little more muscle, it becomes harder to gain.
Absolutely. And I think it's also important to note for everybody that those are also prime years. You're still going through puberty, your hormones are optimal, your growth hormone, your test, all that stuff's at peak levels.
Yeah.
And that's why when I see young guys who are into this and they're in that kind of age range, anywhere between 15 and 22, that's the money time. That's when you can make the most gains.
Yep. And you think about it too, that's probably the lowest stress years of your life. You don't really have responsibilities outside of school. And again, so those years I would pretty much just focus on, go to school, eat a bunch of food and lift weights. It's that's every meathead's dream. No, I didn't play any sports. So I got into bodybuilding, or like I said, around age 15, and I kind of just went full force with that because I really enjoyed it and I was really into it. And I was definitely the meathead nerd who was reading scientific studies at the age 15, which is strange, but I enjoyed doing it.
And then you got your bachelor's in, what was it?
Exercise science. So I had originally planned to go to college for architecture and engineering. And, during my senior year in high school, I was competing in bodybuilding. And I was like, oh, you can go to school for exercise science? I'm like, I'm doing that. So, decided to make that my major and went, again, full force into that.
I can relate because I didn't have the realization until I was already in college. And so I was already going down a mechanical engineer path. But then I was able to kind of push on biomechanical onto it and get all the biomechanics and mix my major with that.
No, that's cool. That's cool.
Because I was already too far down that path. But so I can totally relate to that.
No, that's cool. Yeah. When you're legitimately interested in something and then you realize you can study it in school, you're like, that makes the most sense because I was the same. I was going to be, going to mechanical engineering and because, it's a good field to get into, but exercise science. Yeah.
Michigan, Detroit, automotive.
Yeah, exactly. So that was the route I was going to go.
Yeah. No, it's fascinating. But the last thing, Derek, let's hit this point home where we're talking about in the newbie gains of how much real progress you can make in the first few years. How important do you think it is to eat in a surplus for a lot of beginners because they're so obsessed with that beach body?
Right.
Because you didn't gain that 30-pound of muscle by just eating 2,000 calories.
No, I was eating a lot, and like I said, there was definitely a few off seasons where I got a bit plump. So, but I did my first show my senior year in high school, and then obviously I bulked after that. And after that off season, I took pictures of myself, and I was, higher fat than I wanted to be. And I didn't plan on competing that year because I was like, oh man, I'm fat. Like I don't really make any progress. But then when I started cutting and I was trying to get lean, I was like, oh, I made a lot of progress this year. But again, I was eating at that time 4,000, 5,000 calories a day, every single day for a year straight. And like we were saying, during those prime teenage years, and especially those newer years when you're just getting started, you're going to make the most progress. So I definitely say for any younger person listening who wants to be competitive, take advantage of those younger years and eat in a surplus. Now, that doesn't mean you have to get sloppy and you don't have to gain a lot of fat, but don't be so hung up on having a six-pack year-round because you're not going to gain optimally at that point.
How do you monitor progress in a bulking season? So how do you keep track of your body weight, body fat? With that?
So during that time period, I was trying to gain 1 pound a week, which is probably faster than someone should gain because you're going to gain some fat, but that was my goal. So gain 1 pound of weight a week. And I was also, again, like I said before, my training was structured a lot towards strength. So I was trying to get stronger every week. My goal was simply to either perform more reps than I did the previous week or lift heavier than I did the previous week. So it was almost like a built-in progression. But again, when you're younger and eating so much and you have so much time to devote to eating and training and sleep and resting, you can pretty much get stronger, lift heavier in some way every week. As you know, as you get older and more established in the point where your strength, so let's say someone starts benching and then they can bench 60 pounds for 5 reps. The amount of progress you can go up is a lot higher than if you're already at, let's say, 275 for 5 reps. The amount of strength you can gain relative to your starting point is much lower at that point. So again, taking advantage of those newbie gains and those younger years is very crucial for someone's long-term success.
Yeah, it's funny. I think when you start bulking, it's super easy to get too fat as well. Not too fat, but yeah, it's like, what do you have a cutoff number? Because I realized after my first bulk, I was like 15% body fat is like a good range. If you start sliding the other way.
Yeah. And with my clients that I work with long term, so I have a client, one of the guys who just competed yesterday, his lowest weight was 148. So we're setting his upper end for his bulk at 165. So we're like, you can't get above 165. Like that's the high end. Like if you get there, that's too much,
Okay. So 148 is the stage weight and 165 is
that's his upper end.
So what is that? Like 15, 20 pounds? Yeah.
It's like 20, like 15, 20. So yeah, a little bit, so almost 20 pounds.
I love how strategic that is. I like the accuracy in that because I think like you can totally because so many guys, even like one of my clients, like he had a goal to bulk and then halfway through it, he's like, nah, I just like my abs too much. So
yeah,
like a lot of people just, they had that. I mean, people won't hire us a lot of the time in the beginning to get leaner. So it's like your lifestyle clients you're talking about, they are rare, but they are like, those are the people that are ultimately competitive.
Yeah. And again, how you structure a client's program or how strict you are on certain things depends on their long-term goals. If someone has no desire to compete and they just want to get lean or gain muscle for the sake of a lifestyle, you can be a little more loose with things. Like it doesn't have to be as strict. But if someone is a competitor and they want to compete for years, down the road, you kind of need to keep things a little tighter even in the off season. But I've seen people, like you said, they'll come to me and they'll want to cut and they'll start getting lean and they're like, you know what, I don't really want to get lean anymore. I want to start gaining size. Or vice versa, someone will start gaining size and they're like, I'd rather be lean. So it just kind of depends on what that person wants to do for themselves.
That was the point I was going to bring up. It's going down and going up. When people start seeing, when they start getting to that point when they're cutting, they start getting flat, but the leanness isn't being apparent yet, and they just start going, oh no, they just want to go the other direction. They just start looking small, and they freak out. And likewise, when someone starts gaining size, and they're not seeing it the right way, they're just seeing the fluff or they're getting soft or whatever, and then they have another maybe 5, maybe they would have made some decent gains on the bulk, but still got another 5 pounds. And it's really, really easy for especially newer people to kind of get to fall into those traps. And that's when it's really, really helpful to have a coach and someone with a more expert eye. See that and be like, no, you're still okay. This is what we're expecting. And you just got to push through this, and you're going to like what's on the other side. And so I had a question going back to those early years when you made a lot of that progress. What kind of training split were you utilizing at the time, and what kind of rep ranges were you focusing on, and just your general kind of setup, and then also kind of how you've evolved that since.
Yeah. So when I very first started, I was doing the typical bro type split where, like chest day, back day, arm day, shoulder day, and 1 leg day per week. So I probably did that for the first 2 years. And then after that point, I switched to more of like an upper body day, lower body day, and then push-pull legs type of split 5 days a week. So I would say first 2 years, hit each muscle group once a week. After those first 2 years, I started hitting each muscle group twice a week, and more strength focused after those first 2 years. So I would say the first 2 years was more so just like learning what everything was about. Like I didn't really have an in-depth knowledge on training or anything like that. So it was kind of following the typical bro type split that was popularized at that time. And then, just a typical bodybuilding type stuff. And then you learn like, oh, well, a little higher frequency and varying up the rep ranges more is going to be more beneficial. So I would have like, the upper body days and the lower body days at the beginning of the week with the lower rep stuff. And then the Thursday, Friday, Saturday push-pull legs was more of the 8 to 12 typical hypertrophy rep range type stuff. So it was more of a mix versus in the beginning of years, it was probably mostly all bodybuilding style, higher rep stuff.
And even like training with you now, I think like I remember seeing you at a powerlifting meet in Mount Morris, and you posted a meme later that was like when you show up at a powerlifting meet looking like a bodybuilder.
Yeah. So funny story.
Yeah, you're like one of the few guys who show up shredded, like really powerlifting meet.
My second powerlifting meet I ever did, which was a year before the USAPL increased from 198 to the 205 class, I dieted down to 198, and that was pretty close to like bodybuilding stage readiness. So like I showed up and all the guys were like, hey man, you lost? This isn't a bodybuilding show. And then I ended up winning my class and everything. And I mean, they were just messing around. They weren't serious. But like you said, years ago, it was not the norm to see a powerlifter lean and shredded. But nowadays, the weight classes are getting even more and more competitive, and a lot of guys are dieting down to weight classes, so they're showing up pretty lean. So I would say there's definitely been a shift in powerlifting in the last 10 years as far as the look that people have, or it's no longer just the sport for overweight people to lift heavy, which I think a lot of people thought that's what powerlifting was back in the day.
It was for a lot of years, and I'm very familiar with the shift. And like another good example is like Dan Green, who was one of the first people that started breaking that mold. Yeah. But powerlifting's gotten so big now that it's so competitive, and if you think about it, to be as competitive as possible, you want as much functional mass as possible. So what is that fat really doing for you? You get some of it's going to provide a little bit of cushion, so you don't want to be bodybuilding shredded, but what's holding a bunch of extra fluff in your belly or wherever going to do for you? Not much. So you might as well fill that all that weight out with muscle, so you can actually move the weight.
Right. And I was going to say, for a lot of people, like you're saying, being a little heavier is probably good, but let's say, so for me, I usually compete at 205. So for me, the bulk all the way up to the 232 class, that's 25 extra pounds of weight. Like that's a bit more. I'd be more competitive dieting down to 205 than cruising around at 210, 215, competing at 232. But, if someone's close to, let's say someone usually hovers around like 190, they could benefit from bulking up to the top end of the 205 class, probably more so than dieting down to 183. So it kind of depends on where someone's at, whether they diet up or down to a weight class. But like you're saying, there's a difference between, dieting up and down in a weight class versus being 2 weight classes higher than you need to be. So.
and and also now because it's so competitive, like the water cuts too, because guys will be 20 pounds above their weight class, drop the water, and then fill it right back.
Yeah.
We have like the 242 lifters who are really sitting around 270, but they just drop the water and then just put it back on.
That's the crazy thing about the federations that have the 24-hour weigh-in is, like you said, you can legit drop 20 pounds of water for weigh-in and then rehydrate back up. So that's a whole nother competitive ball game. I would never do that. I would never try to do that.
20 is a lot. I can just any given day go up and down 10, depending on where I'm at. But 20 is a lot.
Well, I mean, some guys in those federations dehydrate so much, and then they weigh in, and as soon as they're done weighing in, they use IVs to rehydrate. Like it's to that level.
That's intense.
Mm-hmm.
That is very intense. Well, so right now, what is your training split like?
Right now, I'm doing basically a bench day, a deadlift day, a squat day, and then another like upper body type push day.
So 4 days a week?
4 days a week right now. Coming back from a couple of injuries. I think I told you when I saw you, but I was just dealing with like knee tendonitis it's been 2 years. It was about 8 months in my left knee. Then my left knee got better. Then it was like 8 months in my right knee. So been dealing with that for a while.
Oh man.
Now that you're powerlifting, do you overhead press at all? Because you said a second upper body day.
I do. I was focusing on military press for a while. I don't necessarily think that carries over to my bench press. So I've been focusing more on incline bench press than military press. And I feel like that's benefited me more than the strict overhead military type presses.
Mm-hmm. I find that the overhead's just really good for my shoulder health in general. Mm-hmm. I think it adds a little bit to my bench, but like not really. But I do like a decent amount of incline and other pressing too. But just as far as the shoulder strength, shoulder health and strength, core strength, and then also tricep. I got a lot of tricep on my head, which that carries over. But otherwise, I was just curious if you included it or not.
Yeah. I still do I'll do standing military press now, but I don't do it as like a main strength focus exercise. I'll do it more for like how we're saying the hypertrophy work with the higher reps. So for me, I find when I have long arms for my torso and my structure. So when I do heavy standing military press, I have the tendency to lean back too much when it gets hard. And so I'll find that I'll overstress my lower back. So I'll usually stop the sets a couple reps shy of failure and not focus as much on doing like triples or doubles or things like that. I'll keep it like, 5 to 8, rep range for that.
Mm-hmm.
Is that your rep range for hypertrophy days, like 5 to 8?
No, I'll do, so like back and bicep type stuff, I'll do 8 to 12. For a more strength focused type exercise that I want hypertrophy in, like close grip bench, then I'll do 5 to 8.
That makes sense.
Yeah, there's isn't there some research that shows that for shoulders, like deltoids and biceps, higher reps like end up engaging the muscle more? I don't know if it's like actually the muscle type or if it's just the fact that you get a better burn.
Yeah, well, and as you know, it's like you can stimulate hypertrophy with any rep range. So it's kind of like what's the most efficient way to do that for that muscle group. Mm-hmm. And for certain muscle groups, let's say for the lat pull down, form is usually an issue for a lot of people. So doing sets of 4 to 6 reps on lat pull down is probably going to lead to inferior form. So for something like that, I would recommend 8 to 12 reps just because the load is lighter, so your form can be better. And I think that's important to look at for all exercise selections. Same with let's say a dumbbell side lateral. Doing triples on that can lead to hypertrophy, but it's probably not the most efficient way to do it.
I would agree. I mean, imagine doing triples on a dumbbell lateral.
Yeah. I mean, it's scientifically valid, but it's probably not the most efficient way to go about it.
It's funny you say that because that's the reason we started this podcast. It's called Engineered Muscle because there's science and then there's the practical application.
Yeah.
Sometimes they don't go hand in hand. Like there's a little link in there that you have to connect your.
Just putting it together. I'm a really big fan of 20s for laterals, and I like some 20s on back stuff too.
Yeah.
and legs.
Yeah. See, and like we were talking about before, like, years prior, 1 to 5 reps was considered strength, 6 to 12 was considered hypertrophy, then 12 plus was considered endurance. But as the research shows, it's any rep range, I think up to 30 reps to failure can stimulate hypertrophy. So it's like,
it was higher than that even.
Was it? Yeah. So it's like, I think that labeling rep ranges for certain things is invalid, but obviously if your goal is to increase 1 repetition max strength, lifting in the lower rep range is going to have more carryover.
Yeah.
So
I think as long as you're, sorry. I didn't interrupt.
No, go ahead.
I think as long as you're staying anaerobic, as long as you're not still kind of switching over into just like doing cardio with whatever, I think it's still going to be hypertrophy. Now, but the effectiveness will vary based on what you're doing. But like sometimes like 50 rep sets and stuff, and like or if you're reaching that with like intensity sets or drop sets or whatever, I still think are effective. But usually, like I spend the majority of my when I prescribe hypertrophy, I prescribe it like between 4 and 20 to 30 tops. Usually is kind of where my general recommendation is.
Yeah.
Specifics.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. So yeah, I think just not getting so boggled down on assigning like this rep range is for this rep range is for that. And like you're saying, when you apply things in the real world, it can change based on a certain person. So like, let's say I respond very well to 6 to 8 reps on the side lateral versus someone else their form may suffer. They may not actually feel that muscle working. So they may do better doing 20s on the side lateral. So you have to be flexible in your approaches for different people.
Do you do 6 to 8 on side lateral?
I don't even do side laterals. I used
to too big.
Yeah, I used to all the time when I was getting started, but I probably do side laterals once or twice a year, just for just to do them here and there, like if I feel like doing them that day.
And what's funny is like when you actually when you transitioned from bodybuilding to powerlifting, was that just because you wanted to move a lot of weight, or was that because you like wanted a different focus? Like bodybuilding was getting tiring, and you're like, I need a new sport.
It was more so I wanted a different focus. Just bodybuilding, especially those last 8 weeks of contest prep, is so life intensive. It becomes a focus of your life to the point to where, let's say your friends are going out to eat. You can go with them. You can't eat anything. So it's like,
you can smell donuts.
Yeah. So like, I just feel like at that point in my life, competing in bodybuilding was too restrictive for my life outside the gym. So, and powerlifting gives you a little more freedom. Obviously, I'm still dieting, but like last night I went out to eat with one of my friends and ate food. I could do that without stressing about the impact on my performance.
Exactly.
So it still gives me a nice competitive balance to where I'm training hard, I'm still dieting, but it's not overly stressing my life.
No, and I think like that is so spot on, because when I was competing, I had a friend who was getting ready for a marathon. And I wondered, like, what's the level of commitment for each one? And I would ask him, I was like, what kind of time are you spending training for that? He was like, yeah, I just go to the gym 1 hour a day. And that's where I train for the marathon. His diet would never change. Like he's same. Whereas I was doing 30 minutes of cardio, a workout, and every single calorie had to matter outside.
Yeah.
And I just think like people don't realize that it's a different level of discipline when it comes to bodybuilding, physique, anything with like where you get on stage.
Yeah. So for bodybuilding, the nutrition aspect is almost more important than the training aspect, especially during contest prep, versus a performance type sport. A lot of times it's just simply getting calories in, like everyone knows when Michael Phelps was talking about how much calories he eat and all that stuff, he's eating, 10,000 calories a day, just putting down food. So it's a different type of nutrition strategy for bodybuilding than other sports. And it's a more neurotic way, because in bodybuilding, when you eat something, you're always consciously thinking, how did that affect my physique? How is that going to make me look? Every single meal of the day is, makes you feel that way. Versus other sports, you don't have that mental stress.
It's a different level of discipline. And I think as a coach, as I mature more, I'm starting to realize that if like we had Alberto Nunez on here a few weeks ago, and he was talking about how like when you get a new client, if they've had discipline in other areas of life, those will be the easiest because they can deploy that discipline into fitness now. But people who have never had real discipline in other areas, they'll have to really build those foundations with you as a coach. And I think that was so spot on.
Yeah, no, for sure. And no, and I think doing bodybuilding and all that stuff actually helped me out a lot in college because I was already very structured with a schedule. So then going into college, it almost made everything easier because at that point, it was like, I'm eating my meals at these times per day. I have my classes at these times. So I'm going to train at this time. I'm going to work at this time. So I was already very regimented, and adding in college to that almost made it more regimented, which in turn helped my bodybuilding. It almost gave me like less time to mess up, if that makes sense.
Totally does. And how has sorry, Madison, I'll just ask this question. How has contest prep changed from when you were 18 years old competing for your first show? How has that process in our community changed since then to now to where we contest prep? Has the process changed a little, or has it been like pretty much the same?
I would say it's changed in the fact that now flexible dieting is very popular versus when I started, it was meal plan, clean food, 100%, no variation from that type of thing. But now it's, as we've learned, you don't have to just eat chicken, broccoli, and rice for every meal of the day to get shredded. So I would say what has changed the most is the viewpoint on what foods can be incorporated into a contest prep. And as we've learned, it's like you can flexible diet and get just as shredded as someone who's on a meal plan strictly eating quote unquote clean foods.
Hey man, we were born at the right time then.
Yeah. No, there's most of my preps, like I said, it was like chicken, vegetables, and rice for most meals. Very, very simple, straightforward. And again, there's nothing wrong with that. The main benefit of someone following a meal plan is it eliminates variance from that meal plan. So if you're eating the same thing every day, you're hitting the same macros every single day, and things are on point. But on the flip side, you get a little crazy because you start craving a ton of other food. So psychologically, it's not ideal.
Mm-hmm. And I think like a lot of old school guys, they still are full believers. Like even like guys who compete in Mr. Olympia, like Dexter Jackson, he doesn't even believe in macros. I have a lot of old school OGs who are, like in their 40s and 50s competing. I mean, those guys like you bring up macros and you're not speaking the same language. They're still meal plan oriented very much.
But so what they have to realize is with a meal plan, you are controlling macros.
Yeah.
So your macros are set with certain foods, but you're not viewing it in terms of macro numbers. You're viewing it in terms of food quantities. But the macros are still the same. You know what I'm saying? So let's say someone has a meal plan that's 200 protein, 250 carbs, 75 fat. They're eating the same foods every day, so they're hitting those same macros every day. So it's just a different way to look at it.
I mean, if you give me a meal plan, I'll still put it in MyFitnessPal and do the macros on it.
Right. So you're still hitting macros. You're just setting it up by food instead of macros.
Yeah, Madison, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I mean right now I'm going by macros, but like my 5 days of the week is practically a meal plan. I eat the exact same thing.
Yeah.
It's like chicken, rice, beef, rice, and et cetera. And I just think the only thing that, which was I think why a lot of the top pros still kind of eat that way, besides just like being old school and tradition, is I think at the top 1%, 2% level, there's a slight difference in food choice there. So you could get probably to 95+% of whatever type of stage condition with whatever kind of food, assuming the macros, right? But I think there's just whether it's a digestibility or immune response or whatever it really happens to be, kind of factor that kind of plays in one of those quote unquote clean foods, which is I think part of why that's kind of stuck around. Do you think that's true at all?
Yeah. No, I still think, especially during those contest prep last weeks, someone's going to do better eating more of a bro style diet than eating Pop-Tarts and cookies and stuff. It's just more efficient. You're going to feel better. You're probably going to be less hungry in ways, because I always use this example of if I eat 2 Pop-Tarts, which is 80 grams of carbs, I don't feel like I ate anything, but that's 80 grams of carbs. So I'm going to be more full and satiated by eating rice and broccoli for carbs than 2 Pop-Tarts. So I definitely think towards the end of prep, and as your calories get lower and things like that, you are going to do better eating more nutrient-dense foods and trying to work in more treats or cookies or things like that.
Yeah, like 80 grams of like table sugar if you were to eat versus.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you're not going to feel anything from that.
It'd be completely different.
Mm-hmm.
Like blood sugar too. It's going to be a very big difference. Excuse me.
And Derek, I think like you are a really good person to ask this question to. When you guys compete on bodybuilding stage, a lot of the time between competitors, there's a very small difference, right? And like some are better sculpted in the shoulders. Some have it's like the slight changes that make a competitor win. Like we look at like men's physique, or we look at open bodybuilding. When you are like getting someone ready for a bodybuilding show or a men's physique, do you ever do workouts based on what body part is lacking on that athlete? Or is it mostly like gain muscle all over and build that body?
In the off season, it'd be definitely, focusing workouts more so to build up weaker points. During contest prep, less so, because at that point you're simply trying to get as shredded as possible. But if someone needs more work on a certain area, I'd probably include more focus on it still. But yeah, like we were saying earlier, it's like, the building process and building up those weak points happens in the off season. Someone isn't going to gain a tremendous amount of muscle during contest prep. Maybe in the beginning weeks they might gain a little muscle, but as things get to the nitty gritty, it's like you're not going to gain muscle at that point.
Spot on. Madison, do you have any questions about this before we go into supplementation?
I had a thought, but I think we might have lost it. Well, yeah, it's just a comment, really, that for as far as weak body parts and because as you were talking about, Mo, people look at the difference between competitor A and B, especially at the higher levels, because bodybuilding is, well, being science, it's also very much an art form, and so there's being able to sculpt the physique and put just making sure that the lines flow in a certain way, we can make a really big difference. So a lot of that's genetic and people's bone structures and how they're put together, but putting a little emphasis in certain places and bringing up someone's shoulders, say, or their side delts, it just changes the whole. They can change the whole physique.
Exactly.
Right, and just the aesthetics in general. And I'm trying to remember when I saw this. There was a research article that came out. I forget if it came out recently or I saw it not too long ago, but it was basically confirmed that which for the longest time science has always said that it's false, is that you can shape the muscle, but they found that hypertrophy can be location specific, even within a muscle, along the length, along the side. So all that shit from old school bodybuilding, with them talking about that kind of stuff, is valid, and we're just finding that out now with the science. Just commenting that.
Yeah, no, there's so like you said, going from science to real world, people have always said you can't shape or have target certain muscle groups, but I don't know if you know the Arnold style concentration curl where you're bent over and you supinate and all that stuff. I legitimately believe that increases the bicep peak. Because when I do it consistently, I notice a difference in the shape of my bicep. So if someone from the real world was doing that, and they're like you said, they're like, well, science says you can't shape the muscle, but I specifically see this in myself. It's kind of one of those things that you apply what you see in the real world, even though science may disagree with it. And it's kind of one of those things too, if someone's like, well, I think this works for me. You can't really tell someone, no, it doesn't, if they see those results themselves. If someone's like, I think I progress better doing this, and you're like, well, science says you don't. You can't really tell someone they're wrong. You know what I'm saying?
Right. Sorry.
So yeah, if they specifically see those results themselves, even if it's just an N = 1 only applies to them. If they're truly getting those better results, you can't tell them they're wrong.
Right. And I think something's important, that because people that today love talking, like the science-based community is really big now, and it's a really great thing. But a lot of people don't understand how science works and how studies work and how we derive that information. And people also have to understand that what sample selection the studies are using, and then also that everything is filtered statistically, and there's a bell curve. So while the majority this might be true, if somebody's an outlier on either side, it can be totally different as well. And like if you were talking about biceps, like I've noticed some exercises will work more towards the elbow joint, where some working more towards the shoulder. I mean, we know that the two heads are separate, so you can kind of focus those. But even like longitudinally or like widthwise, like finding different things can just tweak them a little bit differently.
Mm-hmm.
No, I think like to Derek's point, like imagine trying to tell someone who lost weight on ketogenic that like you can do that with carbs. Like it worked for them, so now they're the same belief that it works. So like to walk them out of it is challenging, because you have to prove to them that hey, it worked for this, and this, and it'll work for you. Add more carbs or this and that. Like if it works for someone, it's almost impossible to change their mind, man. It's even though like science might be all on your side.
Right. Like, yeah. So with the keto diet, someone may think if they had good success with the keto diet is the only diet that works for me to lose weight. And if they want to do the keto diet and follow that, more power to them. Like you can't tell them, well, I mean, you can say other diets work, but if they say this works the best for me, you can't tell them they're wrong. Like if they want to do the keto diet. So
anecdote is really important, and that's something that the science. The people who don't know the science in the science community, because if you talk to the experts, they understand this. But if you talk to people that just kind of say, "Oh, the science says," anecdote is really important. What was true for somebody, if they find anything it's true, it's probably true. Now, as far as this the keto diet thing that you're bringing up, Mo, like, and it was Derek was talking about too. I mean, usually the case with this is that's the only thing they've tried that's worked, and they haven't tried other things that have worked. So they just have a very limited scope of knowledge that does. And it could be, I mean, it's possible that they're a person that the only way for them to lose weight is going to be the keto diet, but probably not, because they haven't actually done anything else effectively before. But that's why
I think it just like throwing butter in your coffee is like dropping all carbs. I mean,
well, I mean, we can argue that putting butter in your coffee is not the best thing to do. I mean,
it does nothing for me, to be honest.
I mean, I don't care even if there's a study that said it was the best thing in the world. I'm like, nah.
No, bro. So Derek, now let's talk about your new focus in life, which is your supplement brand, PR Breaker. That's something. So we do this podcast and we get questions on supplements often. And the funny thing is, a lot of the time people who are pushing supplements are like balls to the walls. Like if you don't, like I go to some conferences and like where people like who believe that these capsules will get you 6-pack abs. Like they genuinely believe that.
Mm-hmm.
You in the supplement community, you have either like one side or the people that don't fully believe it, they're just selling it. So I know you being like in this industry is evidence-based, like you've coached hundreds of people. What made you get into the supplement game and start your own brand in that?
Yeah, so for those that don't know, I worked in the supplement industry for 12 years before I started my own company. So I had a lot of experience in pretty much every aspect of creating a supplement. But what made me want to start my own brand, especially releasing a pre-workout to start, was just the amount of garbage products on the market. Like, so the supplement industry, especially sales at the retail level, is basically a money game. Whatever product stores, both online and retail based, like the brick and mortar type, make the most profit on are usually the ones that are promoting. So a lot of the popular high selling pre-workouts were like a 4-gram proprietary blend pre-workout that has nothing in it. So I mean, that's what the average person is taking is basically a super underdosed, overpriced pre-workout that is basically just giving them a high amount of stimulants and nothing else. So it's like, I wanted to be the exact opposite of that. Like, I want to give you a fully disclosed pre-workout where every ingredient is dosed in the exact dosages used in studies, and I want to use the ingredients that are actually been shown to be beneficial in studies. So basically, I saw a big void in the industry that I felt like I could fill,
And how has that been? How has the response been from the market?
It's been really good. No, and I tell people my target consumer base is the informed consumer. So someone who knows about ingredients, who knows about dosages, who is looking for a legitimate pre-workout. So, I mean, the response has been very, very well received from the people who understand that. And I think now I'm starting to branch beyond that because people who have tried other pre-workouts, like the very popular ones, have tried Materia, and they're like, this is the best pre-workout I've ever taken. Like, how is this possible? And so, I kind of explained to them why it works so well. And so I think where I'm at the point now where I'm starting to branch out beyond that informed consumer base to people who have probably taken supplements for a long time and have probably never taken a legit dose pre-workout before. So they're taking Materia and actually starting to see results beyond just feeling a super high stimulant crack high, because that's basically what most pre-workouts are, is just stimulants.
Right.
400 milligrams of caffeine. And
it's like
very dosed.
400 milligrams caffeine plus some DMHA plus some other stuff. It's like you're just basically overloading someone's nervous system to the point to where it's a sensory overload effect to where they get a high almost from energy. But then it's providing no actual benefits to their performance, and they're crashing hardcore after their workouts from, when the actual stimulation decreases. But short answer, I started a supplement company because I hate the supplement industry. If that makes sense.
No, it does. It does. And for you, like, you actually like put together the formula and you're like, I'm going to go out into the market for this. Let's talk about like an average user who uses your product, right? One who is a powerlifter or a bodybuilder. What difference does it make when they're in the gym, like using Materia versus like a shitty pre-workout? Because I use Materia and I love it.
Yeah. So the Materia does have caffeine in it, but the other ingredients, the tyrosine, choline, and huperzine A, give you a very strong focus effect, but you're not just relying strictly on nervous system stimulation. So someone's going to experience an immediate increase in energy and focus without having that drastic crash post-workout. So a lot of people say that, they'll take Materia and they feel energized for like 6 to 8 hours afterwards, just because it's more of a cognitive effect than a nervous system overload effect. So immediately you're going to feel more of the energy and focus. With the 8 grams of citrulline malate in it, obviously you're going to notice an increase in pump because you're increasing the ability to make nitric oxide. But also there's a handful of studies that show that 8 grams citrulline malate taken pre-workout increase the number of repetitions you can perform after a single dose. So there's a possibility someone may notice an immediate benefit in performance. And then we have the full doses of the carnosine, beta-alanine, and the creatine creatine monohydrate, which are a little bit of the more long-term performance boosters. So after 2 to 4 weeks, someone may start to notice increases in performance from that. So with Materia, you're getting that immediate energy focus and a little bit of performance boost, plus the more longer-term increases in performance with the beta-alanine and creatine. So I mean, it's a pretty solid formula, I must say myself.
You answered my question because I wanted to know what you put in there.
Yeah.
I buy all my stuff because I also dislike the supplement industry.
Yep.
Never products that I enjoy, so I end up buying all my stuff in bulk and then just throwing it together myself.
Yeah.
The only thing I can have I don't use any stims because I was working out pretty late in the day and I don't want to not fall asleep. But I also put potassium salt in mine. Mm-hmm. It gives me crazy pumps. Big fan of
Yeah.
Awesome.
So what I was doing for a long time, I worked for a company called Cybation, and it had a product called Extend, which was a flavored branched amino acid product. I was making my own bulk pre-workout and then using Extend to flavor it. So it's like I was doing the same thing. I was putting the creatine, the beta-alanine, the citrulline malate, the choline, the tyrosine in there. The only thing I wasn't using when I was making it at that time was the huperzine, which I added later on. So I was doing the same thing. I was just making my own pre-workout because there wasn't any pre-workout on the market that was dosed correctly with those ingredients. So like I said, I saw that void and I was like, I can fill this void and make a legitimate pre-workout. For you though, we do offer a caffeine-free version of Materia. So
yeah, okay.
Yeah, you got to get on that now.
So is that your new product, or have you had that from the beginning?
I've had the Materia Zero since November of last year.
Yeah.
So it's been out for a bit. But so when I released the caffeine-free version, I was actually pretty hesitant because stimulant-free pre-workouts typically don't sell well, but it's been received very well. There's a lot of people that want to use it by itself, but also people are doing 1 scoop of the caffeine-free and 1 scoop of the caffeinated version to get less caffeine, but still get the full dosages of all the performance-boosting ingredients. So it offers a dual purpose for Materia users.
That is spot on. Just because in America, we're overly caffeinated kind of
Definitely.
Starbucks right now.
Yeah, so I'll have a lot of people that, like you're doing now, they'll drink coffee in the morning or maybe at work, and then they'll work out in the afternoon, and they're like, well, 1, I don't want to take stimulants this late, or 2, I've already been drinking caffeine all day, I don't want to drink more, so they'll take Materia Zero. Or they'll drink coffee in the morning, and then, like I said, they'll do 1 scoop zero, 1 scoop regular Materia in the afternoon, so they're only getting 150 milligrams of caffeine instead of 300. So it just gives you flexibility based on what you need that day.
Yeah, so that's a smart offering, doing it that way. Do you have any other products in your line right now, or you're just?
Yeah, so I'm releasing a protein powder this month. It was actually supposed to launch last week, but we had a delay in getting the labels printed. So that's one thing I've learned running a business is usually something goes wrong somewhere along the way in every production run somehow. Something's usually delayed, but yeah, so it should be launching by the end of this month.
How is it for your personal life? How is it different on your day-to-day being a fitness coach versus running a supplement brand now?
Working for yourself in general, it's great, but it's also very hard because you have to tell yourself what you're doing every day and also make yourself do it. So for someone who's given you have these lists of things you need to get done. Let's say your boss gives you a list of things you need to get these done by the end of today, or you need to get these done by the end of the week, versus me being my own boss for both businesses. I have to decide what I'm working on every single day. And I also have to motivate myself to do them, because in reality, there's no consequence for me not doing them outside of obviously my business not doing as well. So it can be challenging sometimes.
Do you have certain days where you're focused on the pre-workout, the supplement side, and certain days for coaching?
Usually Mondays are more coaching based than supplement based, simply because I do a lot of my updates on Mondays. So I'll still pack all my orders and ship everything, but outside of that, I try to focus more so on coaching. And then Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday is more supplement based, and then Friday is kind of a mix of both.
And you still have a lot of clients right now that you're coaching, right?
Yeah. So I still have solid coaching base. So the way I set up my scheduling is I'll do the people that need new workout programs on Sundays, and then I do the nutrition updates on Mondays to kind of break it up.
Oh, that's smart.
Yeah. Yeah. So the reason, so when I first started coaching, I did all the updates Saturday morning. And at that time, it worked well because my clients were sending in updates Saturday morning. But, as I've coached over the years, oftentimes those updates ended up coming in Saturday night. So then I shifted to doing all my updates Sunday morning. And again, over time, it led to people sending in their updates late Sunday. So over the years, I just found that doing it that way, where I do all the training programming Sunday nutrition programming on Monday worked out based on when people were sending in their updates.
That's productivity 101.
Yeah, no, because like I said, I used to do all my updates Saturdays. But again, that relies on the client sending in their updates by Saturday morning, which may or may not happen based on the client. So again, it's being flexible with things. Like if you have your clients and they all send in all their updates Saturday morning, sure, do all your updates on Saturday. Like find what works best for you based on how your clients are responding and sending in their updates.
Mm-hmm. Now, I think like you brought up a good point where you were talking about like when you have a boss. So like if you're a personal trainer and you work at like a gym, LA Fitness or something, it's so different, man. It's so different from like running your own coaching business or anything, because now it's all you.
Yeah. Well, and I also, so going back to kind of how I was talking about how you schedule your updates, the same thing goes for work. Like find what hours work best for you to work. Like for me, lately, I'll wake up and eat, and then I'll kind of like check emails, and then I'll kind of chill for an hour, then go to the gym. Like, so not being like overly work focused in the morning works best for me because I work better in the afternoon and evening and night. Someone may be the opposite and work way better in the morning and not great at night. So it's like they should focus on getting their work done in the morning. So being the fact that I'm my own boss, I can be flexible in when I schedule my work. But again, that also means I have to make myself work when it comes time to those work hours. So yeah, it's a little double-edged sword being your own boss.
I think most people aren't ready for that because they see the glory life of working.
Right. Yes.
But you forget that you manage your own self. And that's the hardest thing you can do for like.
Yep. So like I was saying, not only do you manage your time, but you manage the tasks you do. Yeah. So it's definitely challenging, but I enjoy it. But like you're saying, it's not as glorious as people think it is. It's awesome, but also very hard.
And I guess like, do you ever see yourself going back to the personal training side of the business, like being in a gym?
I would
do that.
If I did, it'd be probably strictly for powerlifters because it's very technique based. So I can accomplish a lot. So I'll train people here and there in person still, but it's usually powerlifting technique based. I don't know if I'd ever go back to, training the general public just for general workouts. I don't want to, and I don't say this in like a cocky condescending way, but my knowledge and experience is beyond that. Mm-hmm. So like I would rather use my expertise to help someone with a more focused goal.
100%. I mean, that didn't even come off cocky, so you're good.
All right, good. Because I don't want to be like, yo, I'm too good to do that.
No, and I think like, and whenever we talk about like the whole personal training business, and like every trainer's goal is to like have their own set of clients and like, work from home. And I mean, even people who work at gyms and they enjoy it, part of them still wants like the flexibility of training people online. Do you think like it depends, like when like you have the general population or even even people who compete, some of them actually hire in-person trainers to get ready for a show versus people who actually prefer the online method. What do you think is the difference? Like at what point should you consider hiring an online coach and hiring a personal trainer?
I would say if you're 100% confident in your execution of exercises and work ethic in the gym, you could probably get by with just hiring an online coach. But even, people I've trained with or worked with in person who have been weight training for years and years and years, I've been able to help with their form on certain exercises or just like basic things. It could be like a lat pull down, how we talked about before. Like, they've been weight training for 10 years, but aren't performing a basic exercise like the lat pull down as efficient as they could be. So, I mean, I think anyone, even myself, can benefit from working with someone in person who might have more experience than you in certain aspects that can help you out.
Mm-hmm.
When you're working with online clients, do you do anything to view their training? Do you ever
Yeah. For my powerlifters, we review videos every week.
But do you get like assistant stuff or just like the main stuff?
Usually the main stuff, but they often will send other stuff too. So like if one, and that's for my general clients too, even someone who's not powerlifter, if they're like, hey, can I send you a video of my dumbbell shoulder press and you give me feedback, then I'll do that. So, and that's one of the benefits with, the technology we have is everyone can use their phone to record videos, and it's very easy to send it to you and review. So it's like, you might as well take advantage of that, the technology we have and offer that to your clients.
Absolutely. For me, the video is a huge part of my coaching practice. Everyone's form is crap, and pretty much, and there's always something you can make better. And it's the small tweaks that I find really make the biggest difference.
Yep. And that's what it is, especially for powerlifting, is finding these small tweaks here and there, because one small tweak can lead to big time progress. And, it may be a tweak here, and then like 2 months down the road, you find something else that you can fix. And those little fixes lead to, like I said, big time progress.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Talking about little tweaks, you went from conventional deadlifting to sumo.
Yeah. So that was kind of by accident, to be honest.
What made you do that?
So my 100% honest answer is I always felt like sumo deadlifts was cheating before I tried it. So the very, very first time I ever saw someone sumo deadlift in a competition, he was like 5'2", maybe, like a very short guy. And his range of motion was so small, and he deadlifted like 600 pounds. I was like, that's cheating. Like that's not even a deadlift. So like, a couple years went by, and it was actually a deload week for me. And I was like, let me mess around with sumo deadlift. I've never really done it before. Let me try it out. And I ended up pulling 30 pounds more than my conventional deadlift the first time I ever sumo deadlifted. So like I did that, and I was like, all right, I'm switching.
You're a cheater, that's what you're saying.
No, but so when I actually did it myself, I realized it's not cheating. It's just a different movement. Like it's still hard.
I'm just kidding.
No, hey man, I saw I deadlifted more. I'm like, I'm taking advantage of it. I understand why people do it now. But no, again, it's not cheating. It's just a different movement. So it's like I took the time and I learned how to perform that better and more efficiently. So like I said, before trying it, I thought it was cheating. After trying it, I realized it's not. It's just different.
I remember like when we hung out a week ago, when I missed one of the lifts, and then like I think the second and third rep were a lot easier than the first one. Mm-hmm. You mentioned that it's like you spend a lot of time with your clients getting them good on 1 rep maxes to really like tighten the muscles and make sure the form is on point. How important is that for a lot of like beginners to really get good on that form?
Form is the key, especially your starting position for squats, deadlifts, bench. And the thing to remember about deadlifts is in the competition, it never starts from the eccentric. You're always starting from the concentric. So your starting position and strength and like core bracing and all that stuff is so important. When you're performing reps on a deadlift, like you saw in experience, sometimes that first rep may be a little sloppy and hard, but because you're starting with the eccentric on the second rep, you have time to build up that tension in your hamstrings and all that stuff. So you're probably going to be a little tighter for that second rep. And then that second rep is easier than the first rep. But because in a competition deadlift, you don't have that eccentric to build up that tension and tightness. So, I mean, you'll see people, they go to lift the deadlift on like a max weight, and their hips may shoot up, their back may curve and all that stuff because they don't have that tension built up in those muscles. So they fail to lift. So getting that starting position, that starting technique down is very crucial, especially for the deadlift.
And the only way to really get better at it is 1 rep maxes a lot of the time.
Well, not even 1 rep max, just practicing singles.
Yes.
So I'll have my clients do sub-max singles, but multiple sub-max singles. Because it's just the repetition in the setup and getting into that starting position.
Yeah, because often on deadlift, from rep 2 plus, the position will be completely different than your first rep.
Yep.
Where they come down on rep 2 plus is usually their ideal position, but they don't know how to position themselves there for rep number 1 and tension up to that. And like, so Derek was saying lots of singles, and like, you can even do, you can do a 5 rep set, but like let go of the bar, stand up, and then re-grab the bar.
Yep.
For a set of 5 and just do 5 sets.
Exactly.
I was a big fan of doing like 10 singles for like kind of like a speed range was a big, just 10 sets.
Yep.
Me, my deadlift.
Yeah. So a lot of times if I get a new client who's been powerlifting and they've probably done majority, like, you know, rep work on deadlift, I'll have them do some blocks with a lot of singles. And during those blocks, they may not feel like they're getting stronger because they're not necessarily lifting max weights. But then when we go to test their max weight, their form and execution is so much better. They gain strength from becoming better at the movement. You know, so that's a big part of powerlifting.
Dude, I think that was a really good explanation for a lot of people listening. Because everybody wants to move the most amount of weight. And we were talking about like an off season when you're eating more, you better be increasing the reps or the weight. So you are size, but I think form is critical.
Yep. So there's 3 ways you get stronger. Getting bigger, more muscle, like we talked about at the beginning, neurological adaptations from lifting weights and getting stronger, and then as we just talked about, form. So as a powerlifter, you're working on all 3 of those things. If one of those things, especially form, isn't where it should be, you're limiting the amount of strength you're going to gain. And for a lot of people, those weak points in their form is going to limit their max weights. Because there's a lot of times if you have a weak point or a flaw in your form, you can overcome it with a sub-maximal weight. But once you get to those max weights, your form is going to break at that point.
There's no hiding.
Yeah, there's no, like, you'll see a lot of people like fold forward in squats and they can kind of like good morning it back up or things like that. But once you get that max weight on your back, if you're folded too forward in squats, you're not coming forward or you're not coming up. So it's taking the time to work on all 3 of those things. And it's not uncommon for someone to not take the time to work on their form and strictly try to muscle through those weak points. So it takes, you know, the right mental focus or the strength, because sometimes you have to take a step back. You know, let's say someone's squatting 405 pounds and they can't get past that doing what they're doing. Sometimes you have to take a step back and lower the weight and work on your form to build back up. So it takes a level of maturity in a way to be able to do that. Or there may be a time, I was going to say real quick, there may be a time to where, you know, you're working on someone's form and you try a tweak and it may seem weird the first time you do it because you've never done it before. So you can't just, you know, you can't quickly dismiss it like, oh, I tried it once, that didn't work. You're like, you know, well, it didn't feel as great because you just tried it for the first time. You actually have to put in the repetition and practice with it to get better at it.
Do you think most people undertrain or overtrain?
I would probably, if I was to lean towards either of those sides, I'd probably say undertrain. The reason why is everyone thinks they train hard. No, that's serious. So listen, I had my realization when I was getting into powerlifting, and I did one of the Shiko programs, which is, you know, doing squatting and benching multiple times a week. And before that program, I thought I trained hard. And then I was doing these programs, I was like, man, I wasn't training as hard as I thought I was. Mm-hmm. So I would say if I had to pick one of those 2, I'd say probably people undertrain or don't train as hard as they think they do.
I can't agree with you more, and I think it's true for bodybuilders too. Anybody in the gym, everybody, doesn't matter who they are. They always think they're training hard, but if you get them to train with somebody who does train hard, they just go, I didn't know what the fuck was going on.
Yeah.
They just have, but they don't know what's out there because they've just never had exposure to what real hard training is. So they feel like they're going hard because it feels hard to them.
Yeah.
They don't know what really hard is.
And I think it's very easy to get set in your ways. So like if you always train a certain way, you'll kind of get into your groove and just go with the flow and kind of just go in the gym and do that type of stuff. And again, it feels hard. You feel like you're training hard, but it doesn't mean that you're training as hard as you could be or pushing yourself as much as you could be. But like you said, it kind of takes exposure to, it could be working with a new coach who gives you a program. It could be training with a friend or someone else, you know, who you're like, man, like I haven't been pushing myself. Like So it's kind of like, being exposed to that higher level of training. And that's in all sports, I mean, it's not just powerlifting, bodybuilding, it's all sports.
Yeah. I think most people undertrain, and then in the diet category, most people are underestimating their calories.
Oh yeah, for sure. Dieting, especially as a coach, if you give someone macros and, they're reporting their macros to you, you're assuming they're tracking accurately, reporting correctly. Oftentimes people will estimate too much. So like if you're estimating a lot of your foods instead of actually weighing them, or if you're going out to eat a lot and you're estimating calories, your accuracy is going to be low. So again, and that goes back to what we were talking about, a person's goal, if they're, competing in bodybuilding during a contest prep versus the off season versus strictly just, just trying to lose weight for the sake of losing weight to be healthy. The level of accuracy is going to be more important for someone who's prepping, because at that point you need things to be 100% on point. Versus if someone's trying to lose weight and let's say they incorrectly report their calories by a couple hundred here and there, that's not going to have as big of an impact as someone who's trying to get down to 4 to 6% body fat. Mm-hmm. So yeah, that's where accuracy, and that's how we talked about before, why a lot of people, especially the old school bodybuilders, gravitate towards the meal plans to eliminate that variance in macros and accuracy.
It also takes the thought out of it too. Sometimes the most challenging thing about a free-form macro thing is figuring out how to meet them and what that ends up looking like.
Yeah.
You can put yourself in a bad position, be like, oh shit, now I only have 20 grams of carb left.
Yeah.
How am I going to get that? Or something that is you can't even make the numbers work.
Right. I've had some clients come to me and they're like, I don't want to do math. Like, I don't want to count macro. Like, it's like I want you to tell me what to eat. So like you said, yeah, some people don't want to have that thought process. Or, like you said, a lot of people, when they start counting macros, struggle at the end of the day. Like they're like, I have 40 grams of carbs, 8 grams of fat, 12 grams of protein. What am I supposed to do with this? Mm-hmm. So like they don't want to be put in those positions to where they have to think what to eat.
I find that very often too. And I just wanted to feed back to the training hard discussion we were having earlier. On this podcast probably a couple times, but like one of the ways I like to teach someone who probably hasn't trained hard before what hard feels like is using either one or a series of intensity techniques and just have them take one set like several steps beyond failure and just really force them to push themselves much, much harder than they ever have before. And then after that, they'll get better at other places too, even just on straight sets, because they just know what that effort, that intensity, and that push feels like. Because a lot of times people feel like their failure is like what they think is failure is really like five from failure. And they just haven't, their gauge for intensity and their gauge for exertion just hasn't dialed in right. And I find that's a good way of showing this is what the top kind of feels like. And then it kind of gives them recalibrated.
Yeah. And going back to like how I was saying when I started lifting weights with a typical bro split, most people only train legs once a week. Like most people only train legs once a week. So I think with the training hard aspect, especially in powerlifting, once you take someone from performing the lifts once a week to squatting 2 times a week, squatting 3 times a week, deadlifting twice a week, like that's a whole nother level of training intensity too. Like they may think they're training hard doing 1 squat day a week, 1 deadlift day a week, and then you bump it up to that with a higher frequency and overall greater workload, then they're like, oh man, like this is way harder than I was training. So I mean, there's a lot of aspects or ways that someone can train harder. But it's I think for it's getting out of your comfort zone or getting out of what you're used to doing.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm a huge fan of higher frequencies too, especially like for bodybuilders trying to break up a body part, just up in the frequency upwards of 3 times a week for that. Really effective. And you got to do it at least 2 times a week, everybody. At least.
Well, and going to your point, Mo, like I think a lot of people are so afraid of overtraining You're like, oh, well, you want your biceps to grow, train them 3 days a week. Oh, no, I'm going to overtrain. You are not going to overtrain at all training biceps 3 times a week. Like, that's not a very taxing thing to do at all anyways, So,
yeah,
I think it's just a readjustment of people understand. Like, overtraining is a hard thing to do. Like, you can't overtrain from one hard workout. And a lot of people think that. They're like, oh, I had this really hard workout, like I'm going to overtrain. Like, no, like you cannot overtrain from one workout.
Right. Yeah. And I think like, I know we're like a little over time, but the last few things we'll cover here is where are you currently? Are you maintaining, bulking, cutting? Where is Derek?
So like you said, I've been weight training for 20 years. I'm not really focusing on getting bigger. Like I'm 100% cool with. I'd say I don't know if I can get much bigger, really.
Oh shit, Derek!
I like for me to legitimately get bigger, I'd probably have to eat a ton of food and gain some fat, which I don't really want to do. So I basically maintain around 205 to 210, and just focus on getting stronger.
What's your height?
5'10".
5'10".
Yeah. So my last bodybuilding show in 2011, I competed at 198. Not 198, 195. So top of the light heavy.
No, that's like, so you're literally like sitting around plus or minus 10 pounds from your last shredded stage.
Yeah. Yep. So that's when, so pretty much multiple times a week, people ask me, when am I competing in bodybuilding again? Because they'll see me and I'm pretty lean. I'm probably around like 12% body fat, give or take. Mm-hmm. And so I'm like, I'm decently lean, and that's DEXA scan. That's real body. So when I got my DEXA scan done like 2 years ago, I thought I was like 8% body fat, and it came back as 12. So like everyone underestimates their body fat percentage. They're like, I competed at 3%, 4%. Like, no, you're probably 6 to 8% really. So I'm a legit 12% body fat, which is a good, like, you can see top 4 abs. If I'm good on my diet that week, you can see the bottom 2 abs. Like, it's a good maintainable body fat percentage to me, to where I eat very strict during the week. I enjoy myself a little bit on the weekends. I feel good. I'm not hungry. I'm not forcing food in. So this is like my legit maintenance level calorie intake body fat percentage where I feel good.
No, and I think like, and that's something like beginners should aim for. Like when you've been training for 15, 20 years.
Yes. This is the long-term goal, but you're not going to get here for a decent amount of time. Yeah.
Because like, I mean, if you look at Eric Helms, right? He competed, but like, I remember looking at his pictures like week 1, and he like still got ready for like 12, 15 weeks. He still saw his abs on week 1. Like
Yeah.
And that's 15 years of training. And I think like a lot of beginners should focus on that. Like, that's the aim. Like, that's what you want. But like in the beginning, even when Derek was bulking, like, you gain fat.
Yeah. And I think everyone goes through a lot of years where they learn a lot. You're trying different things. You don't know, like, so you're just experimenting with stuff and learning. And I tell my clients, like, the benefit of working with me is you get to utilize my knowledge without having to make the mistakes I made to get that knowledge. Mm-hmm. Because I mean, we all make mistakes when we're doing stuff, like, or like I said, we may bulk up too much, we may eat too much, we may do programs that aren't that great. But I mean, it's all part of the process of learning how to get to a point in your life to where you have a sustainable fitness lifestyle that you can still enjoy yourself and be healthy without being overly neurotic about things, Right.
All right, Derek. Last thing I really want to talk about that I think you would love, and you have a lot of experience with this, and that is the business side of fitness coaching. And the reason I want to talk about it is right now you see it like, like I think you have like 45 plus clients right now, 40. And how does marketing on Instagram, Facebook, all these social media channels, like, does followers matter? Because as beginner personal trainers, everyone gets so focused on like, because I see you and it's funny, and I'm not saying this just to your face, I see you doing it right. Because you have 3,000, 4,000 followers, post for fun, you post your
yeah.
and you're not overly obsessed with views like followers, but you still have a steady client base and you're making decent income. Walk me through that mindset a little bit.
Well, the thing you have to remember nowadays, especially with social media marketing, is if someone's like, no, I want to become an online coach, blah, 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 they're all basically following the same template of how to get views. Everyone's listening to Gary Vee's podcast, watching his videos, seeing what he says, and doing the same exact thing. You know what I'm saying? So they're following the same. So how are you going to stand out when everyone's doing the same thing? Usually, like a lot of the newer people within the past, let's say 3 to 5 years, that have really excelled in the fitness industry, in the business side, were either the first to market in some way, or they've been grinding for 5 years to get to that point. I know a lot of people that want to become online coaches. They started up, they go for like 2 or 3 months, and they're like, man, I only have 1 client. I'm like, success is not going to come quickly. Like if you think you're just going to start an Instagram page, start posting some videos and get people just throwing their money at you to hire you as a coach, you're fooling yourself, you know? And that includes people that look phenomenal. Like I've seen people that have amazing physiques and they can't get clients, you know, for online coaching. So I think because the landscape is so competitive, one, the most important thing is you need to put in time to build up your reputation. Because you can't just start an online profile on Instagram and say, hey, I'm offering coaching now, and think people are just going to come, you know, run to you. You need to spend time doing quality posts, putting out quality information, educating people, and doing it all for free for years to establish yourself before you're going to start getting those clients coming in.
And I think most people like quit their jobs too early. They like just all in. And it's funny. I think in fitness, there's a like these people who've been on it for 15, 20 years, including myself, who have a name, who have their reputation. And then you have people who fall off within 2-3 years. Like they're big at one point and then you see, you know, just not doing that anymore. And I think like it just comes down to like the fundamentals, which you said, like having, like when I started 2-3 years ago now, like I used to think the same, like shooting for like 10 new clients a month, blah, blah, blah. And literally now I'm like, dude, just 2 clients, 2 new clients, because I really want to perfect this art. Like I really want to get good at it. And now that I have like 40 plus clients under my belt, I think you start to think differently, because this is a long-term game, right? Like,
well, and a lot of people, so the typical time span for someone to become an online coach is start lifting weights, compete once, now I'm a coach. But as you realize, like the knowledge and information you gain or need to become a successful coach is gained through experience working with people. So I tell a lot of people, like if you legit, like let's say someone comes to me, they've been training for a while, they have, you know, they've done a few contests, they have some experience. I say, take on 5 free clients, 100% free, and just gain the experience of working with them before you even start trying to charge people. Because the more people you work with, the more knowledge you gain, the better you become at being a coach. A lot of people think that they're a great coach when they've never coached anyone before. They'd be like me, like I have no experience being a football quarterback coach. Let's say I threw a football around a couple times. I'm kind of good at it, I think, you know. And I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna start coaching people on how to throw footballs. And I start up an Instagram page, like, hey, you know, come be my client. Who's gonna hire me? Let's say I post a video and I can throw a ball really far. That doesn't mean I can turn around and coach someone how to do it.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? You have to build up that experience. And let's say on the flip side, I find some kid, I'm like, you know, I'm going to coach you how to throw for free. We're going to video your progress. We're going to record everything. And now I coach you in person. I gained some experience on how to coach someone in throwing a football. I now have a testimonial of someone I've helped. So you start to build up, you know, your resume a little bit.
Yep.
And now let's say I legit want to pursue this full time. for me to be like, I want to be a quarterback coach for the NFL, it'll probably take 10 plus years of building my way up to even get close to becoming that. So like, I just feel like people need to actually gain actual experience coaching people, put in time, years, and then you might be at a point where you're making some income as a coach.
No, 100%. Like my first 2 clients were completely free. And
that's how it should be. Like,
and you know what's funny, Derek? I've never said this on podcast, but like the very first client, the free one, he taught me. So at that point I'd competed. I'd read a lot of books on fitness. I had a degree in this. And then like he was already eating too little. And I remember talking to you. I was like, he's already at like 1,200 calories. And I do reverse diet him upwards and then start that. And just that learning lesson alone from that one client made me such a better coach in the long run.
Yep.
Because if you just read the books, if you just go off of what your experience was, which was caloric deficit, and caloric deficit, coaching is a different animal.
Yeah. So and reading books and gaining factual knowledge is different than learning how to work with someone. Because like I said, as told a little bit before, as a coach, you give someone a program and macros and all that stuff. It's a lot easier to work with someone if they're doing everything 100% without any issues. But the main purpose of a coach is to help someone along the way when things aren't going perfectly. If someone's just progressing perfectly, losing weight every week, no issues, that's pretty easy. But when there's roadblocks that come up, someone's not progressing as well, you try something out, it doesn't work, you have to think about how to make it work. That's where the challenges come up. So if, let's say you've never prepped anyone before, and then you're working with your first client for contest prep, and they're not progressing very well, and you don't know what to do, now your client's success is in your hands. So if you don't have the experience to actually help them, you probably shouldn't be coaching them, at least not charging them to coach them. But if, you talk to this person, you're like, I've never coached anyone before, I'll coach you for free because you're helping me gain experience. If things don't go correctly, there's a different expectation now laid out. So, they may understand that they're helping you learn, but in turn, you're helping them for free. So it's kind of like a give and take.
Love that. People should be taking notes on that. Yeah. Madison, conclude all of this for me.
Well, I just want to summarize what you're both talking about again, right? There's the knowledge and the application, and that's why we're engineered muscle. Right.
Yeah. No, that's what it is. Gain. I think people, especially nowadays, with the ease of starting, and it's easy to start an online coaching business because all you need is a free Instagram profile. But at the same time, you have to have the humility to realize that you need to gain knowledge and experience before you become a legit coach. And that goes beyond just being successful as yourself, like being a successful bodybuilder or successful powerlifter or whatever. That doesn't automatically make you ready to be a coach.
Mm-hmm. Different skill set.
Different skill set, yeah.
But yeah, I'll just summarize all the things we talked about. This was such a great podcast. We started off with talking about Derek eating 5,000 calories. And then we got into his training split, then why he started his Materia brand and his supplement company. And then just talked about training people, how form matters, accuracy of counting calories. Now we ended it with marketing and fitness. Derek, I really want to appreciate you for your time, man. This is really
No, like I said at the beginning, man, nothing better than getting a couple meatheads together and just rapping about stuff. So it's always good.
Yeah, sometimes we get people on here that I don't fully know, and they're just popular, and then I'm just always worried. I'm I hope we're on the same page. I hope they're a ketogenic warrior or a vegan.
Yeah.
You end up having to watch what you say.
Maybe we need someone here just to argue with them.
I feel, but that can be good sometimes. Sometimes I feel like it's good to have someone who has conflicting views as you that you can kind of go back and forth with.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
It'd be good. So Derek, where can everybody listening find you?
You can find the supplements at prbreaker.com, and the best place to see me myself is on Instagram at Derek Charlebois. So feel free to follow me. Feel free to DM me questions, whatever. Always up for that.
Love it. All right, Derek. Thank you so much for being on. here.